In this video we talk about measuring in feet and inches. So we've already looked a lot about measuring in the metric system, so centimeters, millimeters, and so on. But we're also going to talk a little bit about what we call the imperial system, and that uses feet and inches. So this is a system that's used primarily in the United States, but in Canada we still use it for a lot of different things. And two of the most common of these things would be lumber. If you were to go to the lumber store and purchase some lumber, you would probably buy your lumber in feet and inches. So you would buy a 2x4, which measures 2 inches by 4 inches, and you might get an 8-foot length of that. So that's one place. And the other place that we often use the imperial system, for whatever reason, is when we're talking about our heights. When we're talking about our heights, we often measure our heights and talk about our heights in feet and inches. So we're going to look at this imperial system so you get a good understanding of how it works and how it's different from the metric system. The other common place where you'll see the imperial system, if you ever go to the Subway restaurant and you order a sub, you have the option of getting a 6-inch sub, which is approximately 6 inches long, or you can get a foot long or a 12-inch sub, which is approximately 1 foot long. So what I want you to do is to think about a standard ruler that we might have in the classroom or that you might have at home. And I want you to think about how long do you think that ruler is. It's about 30 centimeters in centimeters, but how long do you think that ruler might be in inches? I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Alright, hopefully you have a number for how long you think a ruler is. Let's have a look at a ruler. So here's a ruler. Now in the last unit I kind of gave you just the metric ruler, so the bottom part, the part that's upside down here. So I would have shown you this part here because that was our focus. Many rulers, not all, but many rulers would have the metric system on one side. So here's the metric system, and the imperial system on the other side. And if you look at this ruler, you can see that there are a total of 12 inches. This is measured in inches. You can see up here it does say inch. And if we wanted the centimeters, we would use this other side here, which is measured in centimeters. So this ruler is measured in inches, and you can see that one ruler measures 12 inches, which is approximately 30 centimeters. You can see here that if we go to the end of this ruler, the left edge anyway, measuring in centimeters, there's 30 centimeters. This 12 inches is a little bit longer than 30 centimeters. So that's a good kind of gauge. Now you'll notice here that the imperial system is a little bit harder to read than the metric system was because it involves fractions not using base 10. So the nice thing about the metric system is that each one of these little tick marks here, each one of these millimeters represented 1/10 of a centimeter. It's a little bit different when we look at the metric system. So I'm going to take the first inch of this ruler and zoom in on it so we can really focus on how to read this. So obviously if I start here at 0 and I go all the way to here, that's 1 inch. And we can do that here. So if I were to ask you, how far is this right here? Well, you can see that's 4 inches. That's the easy part, measuring on the full inch. But it does get a little trickier here. Now one of the things that you might notice if you look at this ruler, and again we're just going to look in this zoomed in section down here, you'll notice there are a bunch of tick marks in between each inch. And you'll notice that each tick mark is a different size. And the reason for that, not each one, but there are lots of different sizes, I should say. If you look at it, the reason for the different sizes is that it makes it easier to read. So for example, you can see here, this tick mark here is the longest one in the bunch. That one is located exactly halfway between 0 and 1. That would be half an inch. So the longest tick mark corresponds to half inch, as it says here. And then if we look between 0 and 1/2, halfway between 0 and 1/2, you'll find the next biggest tick mark, and that's what we call the 1/4 inch. So each tick mark that is this size, this long, represents an even 1/4 inches. So here's 1/4 of an inch from here to here is 1/4 or 1/4. There's another 1/4 from here to here. We've already got that mark. That's the half, so 2/4 being half. And then there's another 1/4 here, so that's 1/4, 2/4, so this one here has to be 3/4. So that's 3/4 of an inch. So when we're using the ruler here to read off values, the important marks for us are going to be, like, the level of accuracy that I'm going to ask you for is to the 1/4 of an inch, at least for now. So just make a copy of that. For example, the key points that we're interested in are the halfway point right in here. So the halfway point, that's usually pretty easy to find. It's the longest tick mark. And then we're looking at the other tick marks, so the 1/4 mark and the 3/4 mark. And you might wonder, how does this all fit in if we kind of take this now and look at the big ruler? I'm going to put a mark, let's say, let's do it right down over here. And we'll measure, so from this point over here, all the way over to the arrow that I just marked. So you can see that that's between 5 and 6. It's bigger than 5, but less than 6. So this has to be 5 inches, 5 inches, and some fraction of an inch. Well, it's not half, because if it were half, it would be right here. And if we go between 5 and 5.5, that would be 1/4. So this right here would be 5 1/4. So this one here has to be 5 3/4. I know you can't see that very well, but so this is 5 1/4, 5 2/4, 5 3/4. So this line right here measures 5 inches and 3/4. Whoops, 3/4 of an inch that we show as 5 3/4. Let me fix that up. A little bit messy there. Try that again. So we get 5 3/4 of an inch. All right, I want you to try one now. So the red arrow is pointing to a line on the ruler. I want you to think about, what's the measurement, again, measuring from the left edge of the ruler, the leftmost edge, all the way to that arrow. How far is it? So start at looking at the full inches. What full inch values does it have to be between? Which one is it bigger than? Which one is it smaller than? And then try to figure out what it is exactly. You can pause the video if you need more time. Let's have a look here. We can see that here's the 9-inch mark and here's the 10-inch mark. So it's certainly between 9 and 10. It's bigger than 9 and less than 10. That means it has to be 9 and something inches. 9 inches plus a little bit. We need to figure out what that little bit is. So is it the halfway point? Well, the halfway point should be the longest tick mark, which is right here. It's not the halfway point. It's less than the halfway point. It's between the 9 and the 9.5. So this has to be 1/4 of an inch. So this is 9 1/4 inches. So that's the measurement there. So that's how we can use the metric system to measure off values. Now I should mention here also that if we're going to measure in, that's just in inches, if we're going to measure in feet, one full ruler, or a full 12 inches, is considered to be 1 foot. So this is 1 foot all the way from the left edge of the ruler to the right edge. So again, in the metric system, we use tens to show our change in units. The metric system, sorry, the imperial system uses 12 inches in 1 foot. So probably a good idea to write that down. So 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. And again, if you think about going into the Subway restaurant and ordering a foot-long sandwich, that's the same as 2 6-inch sandwiches, which is equal to 12 inches. So, all right. So that's a quick introduction to using the imperial system.